Welcome to another weekly featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, James Moffat, where he will gracefully take our featured guest on a personal and business journey and stories that will inspire, educate, and engage you.
Hello and welcome to another Friday Featured Business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, myself, James Moffat. Today we have our 145th guest, Emma Jane. So Emma Jane, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Marvellous. I did say Emma J, didn't I?
You said Jane, but it actually the J does come from Jane though, so there you go.
Oh. Actually, we've had an Emma Jane before. Mm-hmm. That's why I said, Emma, you have to check her out because she's in the UK as well. And she did a TEDx. Right? Okay,
I'll have a look.
Right. So, Emma J, should I say? Mm-hmm. Right. Welcome to the show. So, 145th guest. So, this will be recorded. So, anyone that's watching the replay, so watching this, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify for the audio, and Rumble. And there will be all the speaker notes there and any links that Emma J wants to share, so you can get in touch with her about who she is, our programs, and everything else about her. So that will be available. So let's make a start. So Emma J, this is your life. Actually, I don't normally say that, but one of my guests said, yeah, isn't this like Parkinson or whoever used to do it before? I forgot the original guy, but
I can't remember. Didn't he have a big red book?
Yeah, the big red book. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So Emma J, you started off as an apprentice in a butcher shop.
No, I didn't.
Right. So let's make a start. So the accent. So where are you living now, and where are you originally from?
I live in South Wales, in Neath, and that's where I'm from. I have travelled in between, but I've ended up coming back here.
You loved it so much you had to come back.
Absolutely. Surprisingly, I actually spent years trying to find the right guy. I eventually found the right guy that lived 2 streets away from me when we grew up, and we were in the same school and we never knew each other. So as much as I never thought I'd end up back here, I did.
Wow. It was the love that was drawing you back.
Absolutely. It was meant to be.
Meant to be, yeah. Yes, serendipity.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
definitely.
But you have lived other places, but we'll come on to those in a while.
Okay.
Because just for the audience, I do send a questionnaire, and so I can help steer the story. And if I see anything really exciting in there, then I want to touch on that. So there are some great bits in there. So quite a lot to actually cover. So without further ado, let's make a start. So you are from Wales. You are living in Wales. Mm-hmm. Actually, do you speak Welsh?
I don't, no, but I do speak a bit of Spanish.
Oh,
that'll give my where I've lived away, won't it?
It will. So we're going to find out when you went to Spain and what made you come. Well, why did you leave Spain? So let's touch on that in a minute. So, growing up as a kid, have you got any siblings?
No, I was the only child.
Right. Oh, because
I was the only child. I was the only child for 21 years. So my mum and dad split up when I was about 12, and my dad met somebody a lot younger than him and had another child. So there's 21 years between us. She was my half sister.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It must feel quite strange. It's such a big gap.
Yeah, it was. At the time, it wasn't very nice. I mean, I had a really, really good upbringing. I mean, my parents weren't like rich, but they both had really good jobs. I went to private school. I rode horses. I was in the Welsh team with the horses. I was, I suppose, what some people would call spoilt, but we weren't really rich. They worked really hard for their money. And I suppose when my parents split up, it was like this big bubble of what I thought was perfect was burst, you know? It was a really tough time. My parents split up just before my GCSEs. And it was really tough, you know. And obviously my dad met somebody else who was a lot younger than him. That was difficult to deal with at that point in time. And then a few years later, they tell me that she's pregnant. So yeah, apparently my mum tells a really funny story, but I can't remember this. So my mum and my stepdad at this point in time had gone on holiday. They came back and I was laying on the stairs in her house crying. My mum's like, "Oh my goodness, what's wrong?" I said, "My dad's having a baby." So it was a bit dramatic, but I was 21. So at 21, I think most people are dramatic, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah. And then to know that you're having a sister with such a big age gap. But yeah. I mean, you're quite close now.
We are close, and she is the most amazing aunt to my daughter. So yeah, we only live sort of 30-40 minutes away, but obviously they all work full-time, we work full-time, so we don't see a huge amount of them, but they're amazing with my little girl. And yeah, so as the years have gone on, we've done lots together, so that little tantrum at 21 went away quite quickly.
So you have a little girl?
I do.
And she's how old?
She's 5. She's 5.
Okay. And she was born in Wales? She was born in Wales, yes. Okay. Yeah. So you're already back from Spain by then?
Yeah, so the story starts from way before that.
Oh, okay. So let's just go to the activities you liked as a kid. So, I mean, my daughter, I mean, she's 7. She absolutely loves horses. And she doesn't fear anything, although that's another story because she used to fear everything when she was 5. But we changed that all through a story, right? So she's into that, but I mean, very adventurous. And yeah, I did horse riding as well when I lived in the UK, and I loved it. I was the only guy or the boy in the school that wanted to do horse riding. And everyone said, "Oh yeah, you pussy, it's for girls and all this." And I thought, well, it looks good fun. Well, kind of the John Wayne kind of thing, right? And grew up watching all these cowboy western movies. I thought, I want to ride a horse. So I learned how to ride. So I can see a passion for horses. But you've just mentioned that you represented Wales.
I did, yeah. So I did something called Mounted Games. I don't know if you've heard of that. Gymkhana.
Oh yeah.
In the UK, it's called the Prince Philip Cup. So basically we have like obstacles. So we bend through bending poles. We use flags, get them in a bucket. It's quite fast paced. So it's like racing, and you have like props as well that you use, and you do it as a team, and you pass over like a baton to the next person. I loved it. You know, my mum rode before me, and I grew up. I think I had my first pony when I was 3. And it just grew from there, really. So I rode for my local team, then my county, and then I got into the Welsh team then when I was a little bit older. So yeah, it was amazing. I had wonderful times travelling all over the UK with the horses, you know. When I rode for Neath, we actually won the Royal Welsh Show. So yeah, I had some really, really fantastic times as a child.
Excellent. So you've got quite a few trophies and things.
Lots of trophies, lots of rosettes, lots of medals, and I was very, very active and very sporty as a child. My dad played football. My grandpa was a scout for Leeds. My mum was always very, very fit. I think we were just fit and healthy. You know, I ran for the local Harriers. I was the captain of the netball team, the hockey team. I was brilliant at athletics, but I was quite fast at running. So I was in the Harriers and I was riding at the same time, and one had to give. So as soon as I got very competitive and quite good at riding, I had to give up the running because I couldn't train for both, you know.
Wow. And how's your daughter?
How is she? She doesn't like exercise at all.
She's not horse riding yet?
No, she's not. It's a different game now these days. You know, you're talking everything is probably 10 times more expensive. But more so, she's young at the moment. If she wants to get into it when she's older, great. But at the moment, I think I'd be the one going out in the cold looking after the horse, and she'd just be sitting in the house until it's warm and sunny. So if she wants to do it, and for me, I think because I competed, I don't think I'd want just a horse to keep in a field and go out for a ride now and again. You know, to me, it's like you put the effort in, you look after them twice a day, and that type of thing. So yeah, at the moment she's a bit young. She hasn't quite found what she enjoys. She does some dancing, she does acrobatics, she swims, she goes to Rainbow. So I think she's doing enough at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. So you don't horse ride anymore? That's given up, or you still for fun?
No, I don't. I haven't ridden at all since I was about 23. I sold my last pony when I was 23. So I did it at a really young age. And like I said, when my parents split up, I actually, part of my story is I probably went off the rails a little bit. I met a guy, which was probably the worst guy in the world I could have possibly met, and went completely down the wrong path at that point in time, to be honest.
Right. So that happened. I mean, you mentioned about schooling as well. So it was at the time that you were taking exams and stuff at school?
My parents split up just before my GCSEs. I did really well in my GCSEs, but then I went to college instead of going to sixth form. And that was because of the separation. So I look back and I think if I had stayed in sixth form, perhaps things would have been slightly different. But going to college, having that free reign and not having the discipline, I'm the type of person that needs discipline. I'm a little bit wild. I need taming and I need somebody to rein me in. So going to college didn't do me any favors whatsoever. I met this guy and just never went, really. And being someone that was quite intelligent and could have gone so far, could have gone to university, I'd probably, I definitely messed my life up at that point in time. But the only positive about that, and I look back, I never look at anything with a negative mindset. I look back and I think I learned so much from that situation, and I became the person that I am because of that. I would never have had the strength, I don't think, to open a business in Spain on my own. I would never have had strength to do a lot of the things that I've done in my life, if I hadn't have been through that.
No, I completely agree. I mean, most of my guests have had similar stories, and it was hardship and heartbreaking to hear the stories, but it's made them who they are today.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't see that at the time. It's terrible. But looking back now, if it hadn't have happened, would you be the person you are? And I mean, we could talk all day just about that, because I mean, most of the guests have had similar stories, and some terrible stories and heartbreaking. But anyway, the positive thing is they've come out of it the other side, and they've built their life, and now they look at things in a positive and a completely different way.
I don't think you realise sometimes, Stu. It's taken me a long time. I mean, I'm 45 now, and I met him when I was 17, and I didn't leave him until I was 21. My dad wasn't around, but tried having some input. I pretty much just ditched my parents and chose him. But I think I look back now and I know it was a rebellion thing because of what was going on. But the stuff I've seen, the things I went through, while I was with this guy is horrific. And I look back now and the trauma from that stayed with me forever. And I just know that I can't even imagine my daughter, my parents don't know the half of that. And I can't even imagine my daughter going through some of the things that I went through, seeing some of the things that I seen and experiencing what I did. It would break my heart to think that she was in that situation, You mean with the partner? With the partner and the group of friends, the just the lifestyle, just really bad, just a really, really bad situation, very, very narcissistic, very controlling, very, just a party lifestyle. I didn't mean anything to him really. But I think because I had left my parents and thought I could do this thing on my own, I never, ever reached back out to get their help with it, really, and tried struggling on with it all on my own for quite a long time. So then kind of what happened after that? I mean, how did you come, after your study and everything, when did you leave the UK, and why particularly Spain? So there's a big gap from there, actually. So what happened was I left him, had a really good career. I had a sales job and I did really well at that. I became a professional dancer. I realized when I left him, I went to work for this company and all of a sudden I was somebody, where he kept putting me down, always saying, he'd even say to my face, like, you're not pretty, don't you? You've got a lovely figure, but you're not pretty, don't you? And sort of making me feel like I was lucky to be with him. He was very popular in our area, sort of the guy to be with. And I look back now and I know for a fact he was sort of sleeping with God knows who behind my back, and I could never prove it. And I was so young. I was just so young, naive, stupid, whichever way you want to put it, I suppose. I eventually then got a new job in the city close to us, and it was like a new lease of life. It was all of a sudden I was this really attractive person. Everybody wanted to be my friend. All of the guys wanted to take me out on a date. And it was just like, oh my God, what's going on, you know? And it was nice. It was really nice. Not that I'm the type of person to go out with loads of guys, but it was really nice to have the attention and to actually think, hang on a minute now. All of these years, he's been telling me this story. That's not true. You know, so I eventually left him, which was really hard because he was a bit of a tough guy and I had a bit of a traumatic time leaving him. Probably without going into too many details because I know this is going out everywhere and I don't want any backlash from that. But yeah, it was a really tough time. I eventually got away from it, which I'm really lucky that I did, and I'm glad I did, because then I realised what I'd been living in for the last 4 or 5 years, you know, which was awful. And I missed a chunk of a really important time in my life where I could have gone to university. I could have, you know, met the right people, had, you know, done nice things instead of being attached to somebody that really didn't give me a good life.
Did you
From there, sorry.
Did you move back home?
I did eventually move back home. Yeah, so I did eventually. Actually, no, I didn't. I did move back home for a short space of time, but because I had this really good sales job, I was earning loads of money. I just bought my own house. So I had my own house at 21. And I can remember my stepdad saying to me, I don't know if you're doing the right thing. He said, you don't know that this company is going to last forever. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I look back now and I know I would only wear designer clothes at the time. I tell this story quite a lot. And I'm a co-author of a book, and this story, little bit of this story is in there. I look back and I think, I know why I used to buy so many designer clothes. I wouldn't wear something from a normal shop, which is terrible, but I was so young, naive, and I'd been drawn down this route, you know. And I had that attachment of, because he didn't make me feel anything positive about myself. If I wore designer clothes and put them on top of what I thought wasn't good enough, then I'd be good enough, you know. So I kept doing that, got myself in a little bit of debt because the company I worked for actually went into liquidation. And I'd bought my house only a few months before. So this is where it all begins, really. So when the company went into liquidation, I eventually went back to work, to live with my mum. I took a job with a guy that I know, again, another sales job. I had to sell it really quickly. I lost money on it.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I ended up in quite a bit of debt coming out of that then.
And you made the peace with your mum?
We'd sort of, I wouldn't say made peace. We had a really rocky relationship for the time that I was with the first boyfriend, but we still always spoke. I never not spoke to her. We just had she didn't agree with it. She didn't like him. And, you know, I wouldn't have either looking back. So I went back to live at home, got a little sales job until I was looking for something else. And I remember the day as if it was yesterday. It was one of those drizzly days, you know, where it's not rain and it's not, you know, it was just that horrible stuff. And I dropped the guy off after doing some sales work for him, dropped him off. And I borrowed my friend's car because my car was in the garage, and it was a really old little Fiesta. My car was in the garage and he had this spare. So I was like, can I just borrow that to get to work? And I'm quite tall. Well, I'm 5'6". So in the car, I'm quite tall. So I'm driving home, I'm coming down this hill, there's loads of traffic, and I stop behind the traffic. The next minute, someone comes into the back of me, literally knocks me out of my seat. So I come up out of my seat and I hit the frame around the windscreen. And I can just remember thinking, shit, that hurt, you know? And I look in the mirror and I just have this hole in my head. And this is a lot of the reason I wear a fringe. I've still got a scar there. And I just had this hole in my head that I just looked and I thought, I could see my skull. It was that deep. The next minute, blood just came from everywhere, from my nose, from my mouth, from my head. It was just literally pumping out of me. And I can't remember from there. Oh, I can. I opened the door on the side of the road and he's just standing looking at me, like pale, just looking at me with his phone in his hand. And I said, can you phone me an ambulance, please? Can you just phone me an ambulance? And there was just blood everywhere. And I remember coming around in the hospital then. So that was the start of the change of my life. And I look at that and I think my life was such a mess at that point in time. I'd come out of a terrible relationship. I was out partying every weekend. You know, I wasn't looking after myself. I didn't have a clue what I was doing with my career, with my future. I was a mess, an absolute mess. And plus I was in this debt from my house and my life was just an absolute mess. And I do so much work. I've done so much work on myself. I know, however you want to think of it. But for me, it's the universe telling me enough is enough. This has to stop. There has to be change in your life. And as horrendous as that was, because it was a terrible time in my life, and I suffered severe depression after it. I was blacking out all of the time. I had really bad migraines, which would cause me to be violently sick and black out. I had this hole in my head, and my head was out here like a rugby ball for months after it. And it was awful, but I now look back at that as probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, because I don't really know why I would have ended up from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, what you said. I mean, you've got any scars or any marks or anything?
I've still got the scar there. This is why I wear a fringe. But I was under the burns and plastics unit in our local hospital for months, and they were absolutely brilliant. So they did a really good job. Actually, when I was being stitched up, there was a lady doctor. She was quite young as well, and she was taking them out if she wasn't happy with them and redoing them. As painful as that was, she kept having to give me anesthetic, but she said, I'm not happy with these, I want them perfect, because it was on the front of my face. And as I said earlier, I was out a lot at the weekends. I had a professional dancing contract, so I worked for some nightclubs in Cardiff, and I did it wasn't dodgy dancing, before anybody listening thinks I was a dodgy dancer. Okay, it was for like Radio 1 and big DJs and things like that in nightclubs. So obviously that just absolutely knocked me off my feet. I didn't have the confidence to do that anymore. I spent 9 months at home in my mum's, just suffering with depression, really, just in hoodies and tracksuits and not eating properly, not going out, not seeing my friends. I'd never experienced anything like that before, because I'd gone from being a very, very confident, very popular, outgoing person to somebody that just didn't even want to socialize with anybody,
Yeah, you were saying about the hospital. So, I mean, that was some time ago now. So you're over that. And for 9 months, you said you kind of depressed and didn't leave the home. So what kind of changed you? I mean, what did you do within that 9 months, apart from feeling sorry for yourself? And was there something that was, I mean, I guess your mum's trying to help you as well and to regain your confidence. I mean, after 9 months, what was happening that made you change? Or was it just the healing of your injury?
So what happened was, no, my mum didn't actually understand what was going on. So as much as my mum is a nurse and we are best friends, we've been business partners since then, my mum didn't get it. My mum thought I was being just what can I call it, like lazy, and thought I just didn't want to do anything. She did not get it, but my stepdad did. So I am so lucky. I'm not lucky because I don't want him to suffer with depression, but I'm lucky in a way that my stepdad had suffered with depression for years and years and years, and he recognized what was going on with me. And you know what? He gave me the most simple thing to do, right? Because I wouldn't get out of bed. I'd be in my pajamas most of the day. I'd have dishes from like my breakfast, and typical what a teenager would do. But I'm 21 now, right? And it was just an awful time. And I look back and I think that's just not me. I would never have behaved that way. And it was just terrible. But my stepdad recognized that, and he said, look, we've got to get you just up in the mornings and doing something. So he had his own business, and he said, look, what I want you to do is we're going to have a plan in the morning, and I'm going to stick it up on your door. And he says, the most simplistic plan. And I'm just looking at him thinking, oh God, why? This is just ridiculous. And he said, right, you're going to get up, wash your face, clean your teeth. You're going to go downstairs and have some breakfast. And he had a time for all of these things. So for instance, 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And he said, by 9 o'clock, I want you sitting at my desk. I want you looking at my diary, checking what I've got, emailing over to me. And he gave me a list of things to do. I can't remember what they were now. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh gosh, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you're making me do this. It was the thing that probably saved my life, because I had no routine, I had no structure, I had no purpose. And to me, just staying in bed all day, every day was making me feel better, but it actually wasn't. I was wallowing in my own self-pity. I was actually making myself worse. Then we got to a point where he said to me, look, what are you interested in? Look, your life is being turned upside down. What are you interested in? And I said, you know what? I really miss all the exercise I used to do. I'm passionate about being fit, about being healthy, and look at me. I hadn't put weight on. I'm quite lucky. I have naturally quite a small body, but I was eating terribly. I was depressed all the time. I wasn't sleeping properly. I was like watching films until stupid o'clock in the morning. I had no regular routine. I was really, really unhealthy. He said, right, okay, look, let's get you back on track. Why don't you do a course in something that you enjoy? Why don't you be like, a personal trainer or something? I'm like, I love that. He said, look, I'll support you with it. let's get you back. That's going to get you into the company of other people again. You're going to have to go on a course with other people. It's going to be tough, I know, but it's going to get you back mixing with people, being sociable again, but doing something that you enjoy. Because if you do something that you don't enjoy, you're not going to stick to it. So I'm like, right, okay. And as scary as it was, I signed up for this course to be a personal trainer, and it was the best thing I ever did in my life because I loved it. I was passionate about it. I was interested in it. I was meeting people that thought the same way as I did, that had the same interests as me. And it literally flew from there. So I went on then to do obviously loads of qualifications in nutrition. And both of those things saved my life because I changed how I viewed my own illness. I understood more about it. I started learning more about the body and the mind, how they work together, and the damage that I was doing and how I was actually adding to my depression by the way I was treating my body and my mind. And I just couldn't get over, how this was helping me, and I just wanted to help other people. So I'll cut a very long story short in the middle there. And when I had my money for my accident, for my claim, I swore that I wanted to help other people. Because during the time that I was rehabilitating, I'd pull up into a gym and the car park would be full, and I'd think, I'm not going in there. And I'd turn around and I'd go home. And I thought, if I feel this way, I'm young, I'm slim, I've been fit all of my life. I know what I'm doing in a gym. I know exactly what I'm doing in a gym. How do other women feel? How do older women feel? Larger women feel? Young girls who've got polycystic ovaries? Anything? What people that are depressed, anxious? How do those women feel? I want to help them. So when my money came through, my mum became my partner, and we opened our very first ladies only gym here in Neath. And literally within weeks, it boomed because there was nothing like it around. And we created something really special. And we created like a family environment where we were helping women who felt the way that I had felt, not necessarily being through the same things, but had their own experiences, their own traumas, their own accidents or what mishaps in life that had led them to where they are now. And it absolutely boomed. It boomed so much that my parents, my mum and my stepdad, had an apartment in Spain. We've seen a gap in Spain that there was nothing like what we had. And our plan was to franchise over there. So we opened in Spain, in Torrevieja. I don't know if you know that area at all. No, so we opened in Spain in 2008 in the January, and the recession hit in the June. So.
Right. What a kind of a remarkable story. I mean, just backtracking a little bit. I mean, it was your stepdad that had something similar. That, I mean, looking at this, I mean, a lot of people that help and are the best coaches or the best people that offer advice are people that have gone through it themselves, because
100%.
they see the signs and they know how you feel, and you have that connection with them, right? Mm-hmm. Having a coach that's straight out of a training course and there's never experienced that I find that even though they've got the certificate, I would rather go with someone that didn't have a certificate, that been through it themselves. Mm-hmm. I want to know their secret. How did they come out the other side? So I'm curious about that. Not really going to have time to go into that, but with your real father, did he not offer any support either?
He did, of course. 2 seconds. Do you mind?
Okay.
Do you mind stop it? Sorry.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say, it's typically people that have gone through the experience themselves and they believe, right? Which is, I see the sign behind you, mm-hmm. right? It says believe. So is this because you believe that you could do it, and you believe that you had inside, there was something in there that was still glowing, and you just needed to have someone to help ignite that and move you forward?
At that point in time, no, I don't think there was. I don't think there was anything left inside me at that point in time when I look back, I think that I felt maybe a little bit pressured because I lived with my mum and my stepdad, that I had to do what he said, really, because not in a negative way. They didn't pressure me, but I felt like I owed them something that I couldn't just be in. So I think I did it for them at that point in time.
Okay. Do you think, sorry to interrupt, do you think that if he hadn't have suggested that, you would have been on a downward a downward slope and gone from kind of this depression into something worse?
I don't know how much worse it could have got, but I don't know how I would have found my way out of it, to be honest with you. I'm sure, because I know myself better now, I think that there would have been a point where, yes, I would have had that fire in my stomach again, where I thought, I'm not prepared to put up with this. But that hadn't happened then. It was his push that got that for me. But I am that type of person. And, I've lacked belief in myself several times, one after that, where I've gone from being this very successful person within my job role, dancing, etc., being very popular, being, having loads of friends and being very outgoing, to then being completely knocked, with my accident, completely lost a sense of identity, lost belief in myself. So that is something that I've had to work on several times in my life when these things have happened to me. But you did mention about my dad earlier. I will pick up on that just so that is cleared up. My dad is amazing, but my dad had his own family, and I didn't identify in myself what was going on for a long time. And I lived with my mum and stepdad, so it was slightly different. Not that my dad didn't give me support. I didn't go to him. I didn't tell him. I didn't ask him. So it was sort of that situation when I didn't understand what was going on with myself at the time. So my stepdad stepped in, recognizing as a person from the outside looking in what was going on for me.
Yeah, no, I sometimes think that's easier, someone from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Because sometimes your family don't see it. They dismiss it. You've been lazy, or exactly how your mum said. But anyway, the success of that is you got a very successful, you started a very successful business, and then you went to Spain and you started it there. So what happened?
It was great. I mean, Spain was like one of the best things of my life. I lost a chunk of money, obviously, because of the recession, but it was amazing 2 years. I made some amazing friends. The gym did really, really well. I still speak to people now. I mean, that we left there in 2010. We still have gone back and forth. My parents still had a place out there for a long time, and I have really, really good friends there. So we go as often as we can. And still my old clients say, we miss you. We want you to come back, it's never happened. The opportunity hasn't arisen, but I'd never turn the clocks back. If somebody said to me today, you're going to lose 40 grand by going to Spain, but you'll have the best time of your life for 2 years, I'd go, yeah, okay, take me, I'll go again. Because I learned a lot. I mean, running a business in a foreign country is so hard. I mean, you probably know that yourself. Spain, I would say, it's difficult. They run it as if it's still in Franco's days, as if Franco's still in charge, and I find it very difficult there. There's a rule for the Brits and a rule for the Spanish, it's not, everything's quite unfair. So it was difficult. It was really difficult. I was there on my own as well. So most of the time, my stepdad or my mum would come out for a weekend or a week to help and support me. Then we'd swap over. I'd come back to Wales. We had a really, really good time. It was great. We had a good sequence going between us. But a lot of the time I was on my own, as much as I made friends, I was going home on my own. You didn't
meet a Spanish lover?
No. So I didn't. And to be honest with you, I was trying so hard to make the business work. I made a lot of friends and I went out a lot and I just really had a good time, But my nan became ill. Obviously, the recession had hit. Spain had never really bounced back from that. It's only recently that it has, actually. But my nan became ill and it took me about 3 days to get home due to flights, the cost of flights and everything else. And I got home and I could have lost her. And I went back and I thought, what am I doing? Why am I here on my own? I haven't met anybody. It's not, I was actually married before I went to Spain, to be honest. So I'd had a short marriage. The gap between my first boyfriend and that is quite big. So the story doesn't tie in properly here, but, and we'd sort of realized that things were working before I went there. So the reason I didn't meet somebody was I was still going through that sort of breakup and everything as well. So it was difficult. And I came home and I realized that I hadn't been there for my nan as quick as I wanted to be. And I thought, what am I doing? My whole family is here. As amazing as the life is in Spain, I'm alone. I haven't actually met anybody. I'm here on my own. The friends I have made have all got their family around them. And I don't really know if that's the life I want. So where we had the gym here in Wales, we rented the building. An additional part of the building became free. So I said to my mum, get it, go down, get it. We're going to head home anyway. I want to take on more of the building. I want to put a hairdresser, a beautician. I want to make it like a women's sanctuary where they can go to have everything done. They don't have to worry about what they look like, what they're wearing. They can come in, they can do a workout, they can go and have their hair done. So that's exactly what we did. So we wrapped up in Spain and came home and made a bigger go of what we already had here, which again boomed straight away. So it was the right decision to make.
And are you still doing that?
No.
Right. Okay.
That's the next part of the story.
So just going back, I don't know if we touched on it prior to the show or during, but what you wanted to be when you left school was something completely different. Mm-hmm. What was that?
I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
And a particular reason for that?
Yeah, because I loved Top Gun.
So which one would you associate yourself with?
Oh, definitely Maverick, 100%.
Right.
No, I was brought up. So my granddad was a mechanic in the RAF. So I was brought up very much a tomboy. I obviously with the horses, the horse lorries. I followed Formula One from a kid, like literally. Absolutely loved it, watched it every week with my granddad, and my granddad promised me that one day we'd go to Monaco and we'd get all dressed up and glitz and glam. And so I was very much into things like planes, cars, that type of thing when I was young. I was girly as well, but every time I loved being with my granddad. He was so much fun, and every time I was with him, obviously we spoke about the cars and planes, etc. But before I went to college, I went to see if I could join the RAF. And back in those days, you needed extreme qualifications to go in to even think of being a fighter pilot. And I wasn't quite that intelligent, to be fair. So when I went to college, I did go to do maths, physics and computing, which is what they wanted in A-levels. And the gap between GCSE and A-level for those subjects is huge. And I just drowned in it. I absolutely drowned in it. Instead of, I think from school, I was in a private school that wasn't very sporty. So I was the best at everything, the best at hockey, the best at netball, the fastest runner, the highest jumper. Because I didn't have any competition, nobody was interested in sport. They were all academic. And I was average. So even though I did well in my GCSEs, I was not really intelligent. Yet my school pushed me down that route instead of recognising that I was good at sport. And I do know now that if I had gone to college and actually did sport, I may not have fallen, into the sort of bad crowd that I did at that age. I think I would have had something that I was really interested in, and perhaps I would have gone in a different direction. But hey, hindsight is a wonderful thing, right?
True. And sports, likewise, I was naturally athletic at school. Mm-hmm. I was actually the fastest runner in my junior and junior high school, and everybody would challenge me, and I beat them easy. But I never was spotted by any talent scouts or anything. In those days, who cares? Really good runner, that's it. Mm. So I never bothered with it. It wasn't until later that particularly now with kids, I challenge my kids. My eldest son is 10, right? And I've still got the edge on him, but he is... much better than me at football and many other things now. So, they do catch up quick. And, but keeping sporty, I always found that just looking back, doing the things that you enjoy and that you love, you wake up and you want to do it. Now, doing things that you don't enjoy and you don't love, then there's no passion, and you don't want to get out of bed to do something you don't want to do. So, I went through a lot of that as well growing up. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I left school. And when I was in the corporate world, didn't really want to be there, although I was good at it. And it wasn't until something happens in your life that triggers a decision and a wake-up call that I think, well, what am I doing with my life? And some people may never feel that, and they're just quite content. But I was never, and I always wanted to know there must be something more. I always ask 3 fundamental questions, just digressing a little bit, and then we'll come back. three fundamental questions you ask at some point in your life. You ask when you're a child, what will I be when I grow up? And then when you've grown up and you've experienced kind of the working world or the corporate world, and for some years, you ask again, what's it all about? Alfie, right? Which I wrote about that. I wrote a whole thing about that. And then if you still haven't found it, then you ask again when you retire, what's next? And it doesn't mean it's too late or too early. I think your time is when the time is right for you. It's like people say to me, like, you had kids when you're too old. I said, too old for who? Right? Just because like society expect you to have kids like at this age, and I have them a bit older, right? So what? So I can't have kids then, right? So I mean, it's when you're ready and when the time is right. So you're never too old or too young to make your mind up to do something. So anyway, just going back to what you did. So you weren't the fighter pilot, and right, you had this business, and so what are you doing now?
So from the business, what happened then? Like I said, there's years in between lots of these. Not
another car accident.
No, thank goodness. So there's years in between some of these stories, okay? So obviously I come home from Spain. I have my business back here that we develop more. I'm on the radio every week talking health and fitness. I have a little TV show on our local TV station.
Wow.
It wasn't BBC or ITV, mind, okay? It was just a local TV show. But I was doing really well. I was quite big in the community. I did a lot of work for charity. I traveled to Oklahoma with a kids' cancer charity to support their families. Because now, as my business has grown and throughout all of those experiences in my life, I realized, not just with myself, but with other clients, that fitness and nutrition isn't everything. It isn't just about that. I'm missing something with a few people. And I was missing it with myself as well. And I had myself a life coach at one point, and I thought, oh my God, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to add to my arsenal, my toolkit. I really need this in my life for my clients. And also some of my clients would follow everything that I'd say in regards to exercise and nutrition, but they wouldn't lose an inch or a pound. And obviously I was a female-only gym, right? So I also then I went to a seminar and learned about hormones and stress and how hormones impact. And I'm learning all this new stuff. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like these pieces of the puzzle I've really been missing for the last few years. So I grow as a person during that time. That time within my business when I came back from Spain was my best growth because I learned so much. I did a lot of personal development. I became sort of like one of the go-to people in my area, I suppose, for what I did. I was involved in the community quite a lot. And yeah, it was a really, really good time. But still, I'm on my own here in amongst all of this. I have the odd guy that I date now and again, but I was out with my friends. I was enjoying, I was, having a good time, but really having everything down. Did I have depression now and again? Yes. But I managed it so well, and I knew how to look after myself so well that I'd limit the time and the impact it would have on me. And I did that myself, and that's something I was so proud of, because you suffer with depression and you know that it's probably never, ever going to go away. But what you can do is you can improve your lifestyle so that it doesn't affect you as badly when it does affect you, and hopefully it doesn't last as long. And that's exactly what I've done with it. I know it's never...
Yeah, sorry to just stop you there.
It's okay.
Can I ask you what was trigger and bring on that depression then? Because I mean, having something that's working and a successful business, and you've shown that you've had lots of success where you've been, what would then trigger the depression?
I think anybody with depression can say to you that they don't always know, because I don't think there is a set answer. I think if you have depression, it can get triggered at any point in time. There can be unconscious thoughts, feelings. I mean, when you work with the mind, you can even pass a smell that reminds you of something that can actually trigger you. So it could be anything. Sorry. A big one for me would be lack of sleep and stress. Mm-hmm. I actually did a TED talk a few years ago on stress. Stress has become my area of expertise.
Yeah, I was just going to Sorry again to interrupt. I was just going to ask you about the TED Talk or the TEDx, because there is a difference between a TED Talk and a TEDx, because we've had many guests have done TEDx's, and I didn't know what the difference was. But anyway, lead us into that, because I want to know what you did there. And I want to know, because it's not a 5-minute thing doing a TEDx. It's not something you just say, all right, well, here's the day, turn up there and speak, and then off you go. See you later. It's months of preparation. Right?
It is months of preparation.
How did that come about? And also, how did you first start getting into, I mean, you talked about radio and everything and TV. I mean, I before I did this podcast, I did a radio show first, but it was limited to a very limited amount of time. I didn't want that. I wanted to, and also about talking to things that I wanted to talk about anything, and there was restrictions on what you could and you couldn't. So tell us a bit more about how these happened. How did you end up doing a TEDx? And also, let's get to where you are now with your what you're doing.
So I'll go back to where I was and lead up to that. Okay. So basically what happened was it wasn't my radio show. I spoke on 2 local radio stations. One was a bit smaller than the other, but the other was quite big for our area. And I'd have a weekly spot where I'd come in and talk about health and well-being, mental, physical, and just give tips. People would phone in, I'd give tips, things like that, you know. And the TV show came off the back end of that then. So they loved what I did. I was quite confident speaking, you know, came across well. So we did like a little fitness show, which was all mine. And I would give health and well-being tips, and I'd just do little mini workouts, and they would go out every single day to the local area then on the TV show. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Sorry, you didn't have Tom Jones there at all?
No, we didn't have Tom Jones there, but we did have, who was on? No, it was only local. It was only in Swansea. I can't think who we had now. There was a few different people that came on. I can't think. I'll try and find some information and send it over to you. But it was a long time ago. So that was before I met my current husband. So what happened was, like I said, I was doing all of this stuff. Life was crazy busy. I completely burned out. I traveled to Oklahoma. I was trying to get back and forth Spain as often as I could. If there was something going on in the local community, I was involved in the middle of it. Will you be a part of this? Will you do some fundraising? Will you do, yeah. I just took everything on, you know. I also started to work in the local schools. So I was delivering workshops on health and well-being, growth mindset, delivering some kids fit things, and then rushing back to the gym. And the biggest mistake that I made in business that I know now was making that business all about me. Because I was the face of the business. So everything that happened there, my mum was amazing. And obviously she had her role within the business, but I was the one on the radio. I was the one going to all the events. I was the one that taught the classes. I was the one that did the personal training. And you can't do that forever, you know. What I didn't realize is that if I had trained up some maybe young people that had come from the local college, and I trained them to do what I could do and step back and run the business, it would have worked so much better. But again, hindsight is great, isn't it? That's probably the biggest mistake I made in business, to be honest. So all of this is going really well. I'm doing this work for this kids' cancer charity, and I go to our local town, which I never went to on a night out. So we're speaking in the Senedd, so where the local politicians are. So we're up in the Senedd and doing a talk about the charity, about what we do, etc., etc. Then we come back to Nathan. We're like, should we all go out? Yeah, okay, let's go out. So I go out and I'm thinking, why am I here? This is really not my cup of tea at all. And then this guy looks at my friend and he's like, sees me standing there on my own, clearly not enjoying myself. And he comes over to talk to me. And that's now my husband. And it was a bit strange, really, because I'm the type of person, I don't go out and meet guys on nights out. I go out and I'm the silly person doing press-ups on the bar or something crazy, and entertaining my friends. So this was a big shock for everybody. But I'm sitting there talking to him, and we had so much in common. So it's just uncanny. You know when they say about law of attraction, and I can't even explain to you the amount of things we had in common. He loved F1, I loved F1. I told him I've driven on Silverstone. He's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I tell him my dream is to go to Monaco. It's his dream to go to Monaco. Everything. He wanted to live in Spain. I'd already lived in Spain. So all of these things come out just in general conversation. The next minute he tells me his name. So he's like, yeah, I knew it was Gareth. And he's like, yeah, Gareth Hopkins. And I'm like, you're kidding me. He said, no, why? I said, my dad's name is Gareth Hopkins. I was like, really? The exact same name as my dad. So if anything is meant to be, it was like, this is just uncanny, the amount of things we had in common, you know. And it just went from there, really. It was, I think we'd both been...
Yeah, sorry. Was that not strange? I mean, having the same name as your dad, then? I mean...
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that you went to the same school.
We went to the same school. We did not know each other. We lived 2 streets away from each other when we were growing up, when we were really young. Gareth is 2 or 3, he's 2 school years younger than me. So when you're in primary school, you don't really know anybody that's younger than you, do you? Unless you've got brothers and sisters in their class or anything. So we didn't know each other. We grew up around the corner from each other. And it's so many things that it's his ex-wife. This is a really weird one. So I kept my horses in this field.
His ex-wife is the name of your mum.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not quite as bad as that. But his ex-wife actually was brought up in the house right next to where I kept my horses, and her and her sister used to come and look at my horses and pat my horses. So there's so many things, and I know this may sound a bit silly to everybody listening, but there was so many things that were just like, this is just bizarre, this is just uncanny, you know. And it's really gone from there. We'd both been married before, we both knew what we wanted, what we didn't want, and within 6 months I fell pregnant. And we now have the most fantastic little girl, but I was 39 having her. And again, another huge part of my story was my business was doing really well. I was on the radio, I was doing this, I was doing that. Everything's great. Gareth has a great job. We think that we're going to have this child, put her in our backpack and carry on as normal. And it didn't happen like that at all. So at 39, I had her. She didn't sleep for 9 months. She had milk intolerance and reflux. So we literally did not sleep for 9 months. And it absolutely nearly killed me. So I had postnatal depression. I couldn't put on an inch or a pound. I was underweight. I was about 10 pounds a stone underweight for about 2 years. I really struggled with my mental health. What I will say, and I think is really important to say, because I'm a champion now for the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, and I speak a lot about this because I'm very passionate about helping other mums that go through the same thing. Well, parents, not just mums. But I think it's really important for me to say that I never, ever struggled being her mum. And unfortunately, some women with postnatal depression don't get that bond with their child. I did, thankfully. And she was the best thing in the world, but I couldn't cope with everything else. So, I mean, the brain's primary role is to protect us, right? So what happened was I was under so much stress from the lack of sleep. My hormones were completely imbalanced. My cortisol, my stress hormone was through the roof. My brain was just going, you're not going to run a business. You're literally just going to be a mum. And look after yourself and her, and that's it. That's all you can do. I can remember because I did my own marketing and advertising, trying to do a post on social media for my business, which I went back to 3 weeks after having her, by the way, and not being able to string a sentence together. Literally say this is my laptop. I'm like, not even knowing what I wanted to say, you know. It's like as if all of my knowledge, my experience, my education had just literally disappeared and gone into a bin. And that was my brain protecting me. That was my brain telling me, you cannot keep doing all of these things. You cannot keep pushing yourself. And that severe burnout, the postnatal depression, whatever way you want to describe it, forced me to sell my business very quickly. I couldn't cope, if I'm honest. I couldn't cope with that. I walked in one day and said to my mum, I'd spent those 9 months pretending to everybody that everything was okay. Being within the fitness industry, I was back on social media. I was back in my size 8 clothes within 3 weeks. I was back in my business in 3 weeks. I was pretending on the surface that everything was absolutely amazing. And inside I was dying. And it took me probably nearly 4 years to talk about this. Because I think it's a really, really touchy subject. And I think there's a load of stigma around it because as a woman, for me, especially being older, I felt as if it was the most natural thing I should have been able to do, and I wasn't doing it well, or I didn't feel as if I was doing it well. I was comparing myself to other people. That loss of identity, that knock to my confidence came again. It was exactly like taking me back to my car accident. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what to do. I did not know what to do and where I was going with my life. Luckily, my husband is the absolute most amazing person in the world. But then you've got to look at it from a man's point of view as well, from the man's health point of view. Bless him, he'd be up in the night with me, he'd be helping with feed, she'd be sleeping on him because she wasn't well. He'd then go and do a long day's work, and he has quite a senior role, then come home and I'd be passing him the baby for me to go to bed for an hour. So I talk a lot now about parental mental health and people, after having children, trying to go back to their careers maybe too quickly, because that's definitely what I did. I had this business that was all about me, and I felt that I had to be there or it was going to fail.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I mean, something similar. I mean, when we had our twins, we already had a 3-year-old living in a foreign country as foreigners with no support mechanism. And I was in international sales, traveling all the time on a plane every week. And when we knew we were having twins, first of all, I had to tell my boss we're having another child. And I remember him saying there, I hope it doesn't affect your job. And I think it was shit, right? And then I didn't have the balls to tell him it's twins. Well, when that day came, I was given a choice. Am I a houseman or a salesman? And obviously the houseman, so I lost my job. And that was another wake-up call. But I look back at these things, and I think at the time, I mean, you go through the depression, you go through a lot of emotions. It's a roller coaster ride. But when you look back, you think that was the best thing that happened. And because if that didn't happen, after 20 years of doing something that I'm just keeping the shareholders happy and I'm just a number, then what was the purpose of my life? And having something like that I never made the choice. It was made for me. But then I had to deal with that choice. It's how you deal with it. And you go through all of this. So in saying that, now that all of this has happened, you mentioned 9 months several times. You mentioned 9 months of depression, like when you were 21 after the accident. Then you've mentioned 9 months of kind of like challenges like with your daughter. Is there any more 9 months?
I've never even looked at it that way, to be honest with you. No, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I don't know.
You need some 9 months of good stuff, right? Well,
pregnancy.
9 months.
The pregnancy.
Pregnancy. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, let's kind of move this along to, well, what are you doing now? Because you've mentioned a ton of stuff, and all of this helps mold the way that you are. So, like, as you said, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And at the time, the depression is killing you. And sometimes you don't see a way out of it. But going through what you've gone through and what's changed in your life, and having a very supportive husband, and which kind of all are serendipitous things, because, I mean, having the same name as your dad, grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same school, and all of this is just wonderful, right? So anyway, I want to know what you're doing now, because your skills, obviously, forgetting about education you have at school. I mean, that's just the nonsense that we all go through, right? It's not until you leave school that you start to discover who you really are and what is the meaning and the purpose of your life. And some people never find it. So the fact that you have found it is a blessing in itself, because many people will probably be watching this and thinking that, what is the meaning of my life? And now that you've done it, you've experienced it, and you can help others because of what you've gone through. Yeah, it's quite remarkable. So I want to know, what are you doing now? How people can find you, and a bit more about kind of the services that you offer.
Okay, so from sort of taking 2 years out after selling my business with Quinn, I realised that actually I wasn't really getting much better, because I had no purpose then. As much as I was a mum, there was the best things in the whole world. She is my everything, but I needed a piece of me back. And I think what was a big hit to my confidence as well was relying on my husband. as amazing as he is, and I know that, you know, us women do that when we have children. I'd never been used to that. I'd always earned my own money. In several relationships, I'd been the biggest earner, and all of a sudden, you know, I that wasn't the case. So I always had that fire, that passion inside me. And we were talking earlier, James, about when you're working for somebody else. I think you felt the same. You're working for other people, and you think, actually, surely there's more out there for me, you know. But I was thinking, you know, that I've got to get, how am I going to help other people go through this? And as bad as it was for most people, and it is an awful thing what happened during COVID, it actually gave me the motivation to get back to getting online, doing workshops, doing this, doing that, you know, and getting my name back out there. I did pivot back slightly to do a little bit of fitness, because that's what everybody was doing at the time, and I was offering free fitness. I was doing some stuff for the local college, so I was, you know, getting some videos out for their staff, for their students, etc. And it actually did me the world of good in regards to building back my confidence and raising my platform again, because I think in the beginning, people didn't know what I was doing, you know. So even though I knew I'd sold my gym, I don't necessarily want to personal train forever. I've got a bit of a back issue as well, and I don't want to do that forever. I'm a bit fed up of that now, but I love the coaching aspect of it. Everything that I'm learning in regards to the brain, the mindset, all of these things, that ultimately is the main thing. And that's what I want to do. And then obviously the exercise and the nutrition fits into that. So I created my Life Shaper program, and, you know, still stayed part-time for a while because I loved being a mum, and I didn't want to be full-time until my little girl was full-time in school, which was last year, and gradually built my business. There's two aspects to it. So I go into business as coaching, health and well-being. So I go in, I deliver workshops, I have a look at their well-being strategy, because a lot of it is a tick box exercise for businesses, and they signpost elsewhere. And that really, really annoys me, because I think most people want somebody to talk to. They want somebody to turn to and say if they're having a tough time. They don't want to read what's on a website. So I do that. And my Life Shaper program is aimed at women, successful women who have had some sort of trauma, some experience, some knockback within their life, which has meant that they're now unfit, unhappy and unhealthy, and feeling a little bit lost. They want to reclaim their confidence. They want to reclaim their identity, their vibrance, their energy. And if I'm honest, that's me. So I am passionate about helping women like myself, because I've been on that journey. You know, I'm not saying that what worked for me will work for everybody, but I can guide people along. I've learned so much. I've done so much personal development. I've gone back to re-educate so much over the last few years, that not just do I have my own personal experience, but I have other tools that I use as well to help women realize that it isn't, you know, I've met so many mums that think, all right, that now I'm a mum, that's it for me. No, that's not it for you. You know, you don't have to take that route. That's not it for you. You can still be successful. You can still have the body that you want. You can still do and be what you want. But so many women give up on themselves, and I'm really passionate about helping them find themselves again.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, as you said, it's kind of mindset. I mean, I know we talked earlier about kind of peeling back those layers in the mind. And once you do, you start discovering, the more you discover yourself, the more you can help others. I mean, it sounds a bit of a cliche, but it's true, because learning about yourself, you're kind of peeling back the layers of who we really are. And most people don't know who they are. I mean, I was asked that question. It's actually going to be in the book that's coming out. A bit of a plug for our featured business collective book. There's 11 of us, 11 previous guests that are going to be in the book, but all writing their story or sharing their story. And yeah, I was asked, I was kind of rock bottom and unemployed. And I went to this coach, and she said, there's nothing wrong with your CV. Why aren't you getting a job? I said, because I don't want those jobs. And she said, what do you want? I said, well, I don't know what I want. That's the problem. I don't know what I want. And she said, the problem is you don't know who you are. I thought, well, of course I do. She said, well, she asked me one question, and I've never forgotten that. She said, who are you? And I answered back, James. And she said, well, I know you, James. It says James is coming to see me today. I never asked what your name was. I asked, who are you? And I said, well, a father of 3 kids. And she said, I didn't ask that question either. And every time I answered, she said, no. And she said, stop there. She says, you're not alone. 99% of the population don't know either. And you're lucky if you exist. There's a difference between existing and living. Which one do you want to do? I said, I want to live. And she says, you've got to know who you are then. And I thought, how can I have lived my whole life and I don't know who I am? And that's the problem. That's the problem fundamentally from school. We don't know who we are.
I think the thing is, sorry, go on.
No, carry on. Yeah.
I think the thing is we get pigeonholed, don't we? Mm-hmm. You know, education is a set structure. That's not for everybody, is it? So you're teaching everybody the same thing, and you're pushing them all into this little box. And what do you expect the outcome to be? There's going to be some that thrive in that, and there's going to be some that absolutely don't. Yet the ones that don't may excel in a different area. We get, you know, the stories that we tell ourselves, our past experiences, society's expectations on us. They build up stories in our heads, and that then defines us. We allow that to define us. We allow those stories to drive our actions and our behaviors when those stories are probably not even true. So you're totally right. I mean, awareness is one of the things that I start with all of my clients, because unless you're aware of who you are, the environment you live in, the environment you work in, the people you associate with, who you are in every one of those areas, because you might not be exactly the same person in each of those areas or those roles. Until you know all of that, how can you possibly lead the life that you really are truly meant to lead? Yeah,
I think you could ask. I mean, I tested it out with after I did that, I thought, this is so good. I mean, once you discover who you are, it was so powerful. I thought every man, woman, and child should be doing this, right? At any age. I mean, if you haven't already done it, it's not too, as I said, you're not too young or too old to learn. But once you discover, it changes your life, because then you have a sense of purpose. You know why you're getting out of bed now. I mean, my fundamental thing that came out of it, the absolute number one, was storytelling. That's why I do these shows. That's why I have beautiful, wonderful guests on the show, because it's not just about my story, it's about their story. And if they can share their story, it makes me happy and hopefully helps others.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's the name of the business?
So the business is called 𝗙𝗙𝗘𝗏. So I incorporate all of my years of knowledge in regards to exercise, fitness, but obviously mostly mindset, the mind. I would say stress is my area of expertise. I would say that most people, I coach both men and women, but primarily, specifically my group coaching is for women. And they're usually women that literally have lost themselves in amongst life's chaos, really, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? You know, we get tangled up in the everyday clutter of life, and then we don't have any time for ourselves. We don't know ourselves, and we certainly don't make time for ourselves. So everything becomes too much. You know, people become lost, people become depressed, become anxious, become overloaded, and become extremely unhappy. And I want to help those people. So that's 𝗙𝗙𝗘𝗏. But like I said, I do also go into businesses and help coach within businesses. I deliver workshops, I deliver public speeches and that type of thing.
Oh, yes, we didn't get onto the TEDx yet.
I was just going to lead into that. So that's what my TEDx talk was about. So I called it Me, My Stress, and I. And it's pretty much, it's simplistic. I was a bit worried going and doing the TEDx talk, I'll be honest. There was people there with OBEs and goodness knows what. And the imposter syndrome kicks in, doesn't it? And I had such amazing feedback from it because it's simple. Yes. And it's something that, because it's not complicated, resonates with most people. From my point of view and from my own experience and from the people that I've worked with for the last 16 years doing this, I realise that we very often cause a lot of our own stress. We could already experience stress, which most of us do because life is stressful now. But then we add to that by very often choosing what we believe are anti-stressors, then things that are going to benefit us, which don't. For instance, I've had a terrible day in work, I'm going to go home and drink a bottle of wine, you know. I haven't got time to make tea, I'm going to order a takeaway, you know. And for some people, they lack sleep, they're very tired, and then they drink energy drinks all day. You know, all of these things are added to an already overloaded system. So It is, it's, for me, it's just about us trusting our guts, trusting our intuition, and feeling, is this right for me? Is this where I need to be? Is what I'm doing right for me? Or does it not feel right for me? Because if it doesn't feel right, then it isn't. And how many times do we do that? I look back to the first boyfriend, the decisions I made at that point of time in my life, and I think, I knew when I was making those decisions that they weren't right for me. I knew that this wouldn't work out very well, but I did it anyway. And I want to learn. And if there's anything that I can pass on to my daughter, is if something doesn't feel right for you, you don't have to go with it. There is an alternative. There is another choice that you can make. Otherwise, you are causing a lot of your own stress. You are leading yourself down those paths.
No, I completely agree. I mean, we cause our own problems most of the time because we don't know how to deal with stress.
Yeah.
And we let stress get the better of us. And it's, once you understand kind of the negative impact of it, then you can switch that around and turn the negative into a positive. But it's too easy to dwell on negatives. And we tend to go, if you think, I mean, someone said to me, right, do a simple test. Right. If you mention anything negative in the day, imagine a cookie jar, right? And it's empty, but there's cookies there. You can put them in or take them out, right? At the end of the day, how many every time that you did something positive and thought positive, your cookie would go in the jar. Every time you thought of something negative, you take the cookie out. At the end of the day, how many cookies have you got in the jar, right? And it's surprising that you, throughout the day, if you're aware of negativity, then how many times that you are negative and you think, like, shit, like, I'm a bloody negative person, right? So you have to kind of switch that off. But it's being aware of it. Most of the time we do it subconsciously. We're not even thinking. And like, as you said at the beginning, the universe is answering and helping us. If we're thinking negative, it's going to give us negative because that's what we're thinking. If you're thinking positive, it'll give us that positive. So it's kind of changing that vibration and that frequency to a more conscious, positive one.
It is. And you're saying this and I'm laughing here because my little girl is 5, and as positive a person as I am, even whatever's happened in my life, it doesn't define who I am today. And I will always try to be positive, make better decisions. But you are right. We sometimes, unconsciously say things without realizing it. And my little girl pulled me up on something the other day. We were planning on going somewhere, and I said, well, if it doesn't rain, babes, they've given rain. And she's like, no, mummy, if you say it's going to rain, then it'll rain. It's not going to rain. I'm like, okay. So that was me being told by a 5-year-old to be a bit more positive,
No, but it's absolutely true. I mean, I've read many things about the can-do attitude. I can do it. I will do it. I am doing it. And believing in yourself, it's self-belief. And if we don't, who else is going to believe in you? So you've got to believe that you can do it. Sometimes, I mean, it helps, like that guide, like your stepfather was a guide. He gave you a plan and you followed that plan, right? He wasn't going to do it for you, right? But he gave you a plan. And once you followed that plan, it changed the way you were. So that there's many, even it's the most simplistic thing can change the way that you think, and the way that you think affects the way of your moods and your emotions and everything else. And sometimes just being aware, I try to be aware. If I'm out in the street, if I pass people in the street, do I ignore them? Do I pass the time of day? Do I greet them? Do I hold the door for someone? Do I try to do something? If I can do it, I can easily just walk past and just ignore it. But now I'm aware that could I have made a difference to someone's life just by doing something very simple? And it makes me feel better, but the universe answers you and gives you back something for doing it. So we can all do that. And it's too easy to focus on, although we see it all the time, on the doom and gloom. And I think people like you are the guides. I don't like to say kind of a life coach or anything. I think that's kind of got a tarnished name, but a guide, because you're actually guiding people. They have the answers. They just don't know they have the answers. You're just guiding them to where the answer is. And then they'll see it. And once they see it, they'll think, oh shit, how come I didn't see it? And just going back to what you said before, sometimes it's a complete stranger or someone that's not directly involved that sees it before your family see it.
Yeah.
So anyway, we are going to wrap this up in a minute. So you said, how do you deliver these? What types of programs do you have? Are they online, in person, a combination?
So for my my private coaching with LifeShaper is online, unless obviously you live in my local area. I'm not saying I wouldn't do face-to-face, but online is the way of the world now, isn't it? So I do one-to-one coaching, but primarily I do small group coaching. So I like the group coaching because I think I'm a big believer in, I'm not necessarily the expert in the room. Everybody is an expert in the room, and specifically when you're talking about lived experience, because if somebody is going through depression, anxiety, getting fitter, whatever we're looking at, you're all in the same boat in that group. So for me, working with a group, I get so much more from that, because, and so do the clients, because they bounce ideas off one another as well. You know, this worked for me or this didn't work for me. Then I'll give an idea. I may give a task to do and someone will do it completely different to everybody else, but we'll all learn from that. How she did that, we'll learn from it. So group coaching, I'm actually creating an app at the moment, which I'm hoping to be out in the new year. So I have a coaching group going on at the moment that are trialing the content for the app, which is really exciting. So that's coming soon. In regards to businesses, I will travel anywhere within the UK, you know, for the right project. And I will go into the business, have a look at their current wellbeing strategy, see how I can help them improve that, and either deliver a program with different workshops in it, and I call on other coaches that I work with too, because obviously I don't know everything, and deliver whatever the business itself needs. Really, we identify what the problems are. I do a free sort of diagnostic on the business, see where their well-being strategy is, how well it's working, etc., and then put a proposal together from there.
Right, and you get your daughter to come in and help out.
Actually, yeah, my daughter's amazing. So I do a lot of stuff with my daughter, bless her. She does journal every day. She does a lot of self-reflection. She does a lot of positive self-talk as well. So I do my best with her. I'm trying, I think if we're aware of what we've been through in our life and we've come through the other side, it's easy to pass those teachings on, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I do it through storytelling with the kids, bedtime storytelling. And I tell you, it's absolutely amazing. We record them as well.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to have some of those. I'd love to have some of those.
I've got at least 400 recordings of bedtime storytelling with the kids, but it's interactive and they learn a lot. But it also helps them personal development as well, because they get comfortable telling stories. They learn the art of storytelling, and it becomes educational and all sorts of things. So I learned from my kids how to put a program together for business, because the kids naturally ask questions. So they're curious. So they ask, how many times have you been in a business meeting and people don't ask questions? Yeah. Right. So you're learning from the kids. So anyway, I just want to touch on very quickly the TEDx. Where did you do it? How long did it last? A little bit about that, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay, so I did it in Swansea. So TEDx is a franchise. So I did it through a friend of mine. Her husband had the franchise in Swansea, and I was very lucky to have that position. And I'm really, truly grateful for that. It was something that was on my tick list, you know, something that I always wanted to do. But again, you know, the imposter syndrome kicks in, doesn't it? As I said earlier, you know, there was so many. There was senior lecturers there. There was somebody with an OBE. There was all of these people that, in my eyes, had you know, done so much better in their lives than what I had. Why would somebody want to listen to my TEDx talk, you know? But actually the feedback was phenomenal. It was months of practice. We did have some coaching, where to stand, you know. They're quite rigid, TEDx. So you have to follow their rules. There has to be within a certain time, which is quite restricting. I'm a bit of a free talker, so I found it quite hard to structure the talk and get all of the information in that I wanted to get in, and it's got to be under 15 minutes. So yeah, it was tough. And I thought that I nailed it. And then when I was introduced on stage, I literally started shaking. And I've spoken in front of 3 times the amount of people. There was only 100 people there. I've spoken to way more people than that. But I think it was because it was TEDx. You know, it's such a big thing, isn't it? It's all the promotion around it. It's TEDx, it's this, it's that. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm getting on stage now. And the guy that introduced me is a lovely guy from the local area. And he does a lot of, facilitated events and things like that. And he's so funny. And I get on with him really well. And actually, on the TV show I was on before, I did a lot of stuff with him. So I'm talking to him outside. He's like, what's your talk about? And I said, stress. He's like, right, okay. So when he introduced me, he said, oh, it's really funny because Emma's talking about stress and she's out there shaking from head to toe. No, why would you say that? So, yeah, it was quite nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I can imagine. And what size was the audience there then?
There was 100 people. There was only 100 people allowed in the venue. So,
yeah, I actually share in the book because I was a judge at kind of these talking events, and I was quite happy being a judge. I was good at being a judge, and yeah, it didn't bother me. I'm more than happy to give my bit of feedback on people doing stand-up, talking, whatever. And then they asked for volunteers for the next one. They said in a month's time we want 5 volunteers or whatever it was, and oh yeah, we haven't any volunteers. I'm keeping my hand down. No, I'm not volunteering. I thought I'll be naturally the judge again. And they said, someone shouted out, we haven't heard James do public speaking. I thought, shit, keep quiet. Right. So anyway, they said, oh no, we haven't heard James either. So James, would you like to be one of the guests for the next time? I thought, no, I don't. I thought, yeah, I'd love to, right? And I thought, shit. So luckily the theme was diversity. So it could have been anything. And I write about that in the book. But I won't tell you any more about that. You have to read it. Right? But in saying that, did I read somewhere that you're an author or writing something? You are.
Yeah, so I co-authored a book. So similar to what you're doing with your book, I co-authored a book. It's called The Women's Bounce Back Journey to Health. And it's about my story from my accident. So it's about the journey I took really from because so many people tell their rags to riches story, don't they? And my story is actually the other way around. So it's I'm not saying we were rich, but I've gone from rags. Riches to rags, absolutely. You don't hear many people talking about that. So mine is that way around. So from going from here, hitting rock bottom and then coming back up again. So yeah, it's a really good book, and there's some lovely stories in there. Some incredible women in there that have been through some.
So when did you write that?
I wrote that during lockdown.
All right, so it's just quite recent then.
Yeah, it's quite recent. So the women. Have
you got it there?
I have. I have actually. Have I? Yes, 2 seconds.
We should plug it. Yeah. Always give the opportunity to plug a book. Are you going to write more?
Yes.
All right. That's very nice. It is similar to ours, actually.
Lots of different stories.
I like what you've got at the bottom, inspiring stories.
Yeah. So there you go.
An inspiring collection of personal stories. Excellent.
It's a great book. Yeah, I'd like to write my own book, and I have started putting it together. But it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I'm also writing another one, my own, because this is a collective of 11 people, or 11 previous guests. There will be a second book with more guests. If you want to be in the second book, then let me know.
Yeah, definitely
also,
be interested
Sarah,
in that.
if you want to be in the second book. I mean, we're doing it, and we want to finish this one first before I start advertising the second one. So we're at the final stages now of getting it ready to launch. But my second book.
Where is this being published, James? And like, how out there can you get? Because some of my stories can be quite political as well.
Yeah, it's basically the story from childhood to where you are now. So it's a bit about your story. But
since you interviewed me, loads happened to me. Okay, we've been on a completely different journey involving the NHS and my mum, and she passed away. So yeah, that's a little bit, that might have to be on, where's the other place that you post things you talked about?
Yes, okay, that has to be in a kind of a different book.
Yeah, okay.
So my own one that I'm writing is, I've already got the title. It's The Universe Within Your Mind. And is about going to the different levels of consciousness and really peeling back those layers. So you can go to superficial layers, but then you can go very, very deep and into more spirituality deep. So, but that's one that's in the making. But anyway, Emma J, we need to wrap this up. So I keep saying we need to wrap it up and we keep rambling on. Right. So if you could share all the links as well. So I want the links to the book, where we can find the book, your website, the best way to contact you, how do we reach out to you, and more about your programs and stuff like that. And just in closing, have you got any wise words or any closing statement or anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Okay, so I'll start with obviously the book. It's The Bounce Back Journey of Women's Health, and that can be found on Amazon. It's still on there, and all of the proceeds go to charity, by the way. Sorry, I forgot to say that. So we don't earn anything off this book. We send it all to charity, which is really important to us all. I can be found on all social media platforms with the name Emma, the letter J, 𝗙𝗙𝗘𝗗𝗏, on all platforms. And so obviously you can contact me on those. My website is www.emmajlifeshaper.com. Everything is actually having a rebrand at the moment because of the app that I'm making, but that is all of my current contact. And I will be bringing out another new program in January. So aimed again at women who are really seriously struggling to juggle their being a mum, being a professional, having a successful career, and their health and their happiness at the same time. So if that sounds like you, then please reach out and we can jump on a call, we can have a chat, and I can see if that we're a good fit and if I can help you.
Right, and you offer a kind of a free discovery intro call?
Yeah. Free discovery call, so half an hour free discovery call. In regards to my TEDx talk, it is actually under my name, Emma Hopkins. So I am Emma J. Hopkins. So TEDx, unfortunately, I've had to put my full name, not my business name. So that's Emma Hopkins, and it's called Me, My Stress and I. So I'd love you to have a listen, and I'd love you to give it a thumbs up and maybe share it if you're interested, if you like it. That would be great.
Right, I love that. Me, My Stress and I. I'll have to watch that then. Okay, and any wise words or anything that you want to leave us with would be helpful?
A couple of things that I suppose are a bit cliche, because we see these things on social media and, you know, we're so used to reading all of these quotes. But I think one of the biggest ones for me is don't compare yourself to other people. You are unique, you are individual, and you may not be where you want to be at the moment, but if you keep comparing to other people, you're never going to get there either. So stay in your own lane, focus on yourself. Self-awareness is key, massively key, and really get to know yourself. Really figure out who are you and what roles do you play in your life? How many roles do you play in your life? Because you could be quite different in your mum role than you are in your partner role or in your job role. Figure out who you are in those roles, and, you know, are you acting with integrity in each one of them, or is there something missing? You know, is there a bit of a trigger in any of those areas? And if so, try and iron out those creases. And lastly, I would say, honestly, which is in my TED talk, trust your gut. Understand your instinct, because honestly, it's usually right. I would say I've very rarely been wrong. And when I was younger, I never, ever listened to my intuition. I should have. And, you know, I know I don't look back with regret. I don't believe in that. But I also think that my life would be very different if I had just trusted what I knew was right for me. And if there's anything I'm going to teach my daughter and really, really profess to my daughter, is that one thing. Does it feel right for you? Because if it doesn't, then it probably isn't. Love it.
I mean, people say your gut is your second brain. So use it.
Is.
And it tells you all the time. It tells you when you're anxious, when you're hungry, when you're walking up a dark alleyway, right? So trust it more. Anyway, on that note, MJ, you've been a fantastic 145th guest.
Yay.
Right. I will get this out shortly. I've got a few others that I haven't edited yet, so I'm a little behind. But when I do, I'll give you the links that you can share with your social media as well. Zara, thanks for listening.
Thanks for letting me be part of it and having to edit me out. You extra work, James. Sorry, Emma. I probably held you up.
No, don't be silly. Thank you so much, both. And again, my massive apologies for being late. That was still my baby brain in action, I'm afraid. I have to literally, look at things a little bit better. I do. But I'm really sorry about that. But thank you so much. It's been really nice.
It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you once again. And as it's Friday, I wish you both a wonderful weekend.
Yeah,
you too.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Wow, that was another Featured Business brought to you by Visibility Impact. If you'd like to be our next featured guest or learn how James Mofat can help you leverage on the art and power of interactive storytelling for your business, reach out and schedule a call now.